This is the topic on which I'll be talking to you for next few hours. So this is the basic agenda. So we'll try to understand what is deep learning, why we need deep learning. So where like okay, so conventional machine learning, uh, or like okay, what is the limitation of machine learning, and then like okay, so deep learning is again what. So we will try to see like so deep learning mainly for the application for images and videos. So the implementation of CNN, and we'll see a special type of deep learning or like a special type of theorem for the autoencoders. And finally we will see like okay so how to detect the object. So these are the topics I want to cover in this today's session. So if you have any questions or any clarification is required, please free to post your query on the chat box. I will take them and then try to answer them as well. Right. So with this, like okay, let us start. So I think last few days we have been like discussing about the machine learning and various aspects of machine learning, right? So just to give you the like okay, so just for the continuity of my further discussion. Machine learning, I think all of you are familiar with the definition. So machine learning is a field of computer science that gives computers the ability to learn without being explicitly programmed. That means so compared to conventional programming paradigm, right, where like so if at all you want to get anything to be get performed by the computer, you need to explicitly write a program. You need to explicitly instruct them what you are supposed to perform, what you are supposed to do. Okay. Whereas in case of machine learning, so we don't explicitly write a program. So we want computer to do the learning. that's the that's the main objective. Like okay, so we'll try to give the instances or the data. So from that instances, it has to infer how to make a decision. So that's what like okay, so we intended to perform the intended machine learning algorithms to perform. So I think all of you are again familiar. Like okay, so the machine learning has two stages, right? One is training stage, which is mostly offline. So typically it takes a lot of time. Okay, so to train the model. Okay, so and then like okay, so we have another part. So or the online part of the prediction stage. So where like okay, so we give the data. So utilize the learned model and we expect what is the prediction. So this is basically like okay, so what the machine learning is all about. And so I think probably you also learned about different types of learning, right? So machine learning is all about learning. So we have different categories of learning. Okay, so if you have a data, sufficient amount of data, and every data is labeled. That means whenever I have a data instance, we have also associated a label associated with that data. So that means this instance corresponding to person, this instance corresponding to vehicle, this instance corresponds to fruit, etc. and so forth. Okay. For every data point, so if you have a corresponding label, we can go for a supervised learning. Like, so that means so we can utilize that label to see how machine is learning. If there is any error made by the machine, utilizing that label, whatever the input label available, so we can correct. We can tune the training process. Such kind of learnings are called supervised learning. So there are cases like where you have enormous amount of data. Okay. So the main problem with the supervised learning is, so it is easy to build such kind of model, a classification model. But problem is, in real application, collecting data is one problem, and generating a ground truth for that data, whatever the data you collected. So you should generate that labeled data, right? Labeling also is required. That is means somebody has to sit and annotate the data to create a label of the ground truth. So that becomes very tedious job. In such scenario, so where like okay, we can collect only data, but absence of label, people can go for like okay, so unsupervised learning where I have data, so without any labels, so we can try to find out certain patterns, like okay, so what kind of patterns available in the data. So using that pattern, we can group the similar pattern data into similar groups, and based on that group, so we can associate a label. Once the label is associated to that group, you can still go for a supervised learning. So I think all of you are able to understand, right? So in case of a unsupervised learning, we have a data without label. How do we proceed? Like, okay, so generally we go for a grouping kind of mechanism, a clustering kind of approach, where to group the data which are similar in similar patterns into one group, and we associate a label. So for every such cluster, you can associate a label. Okay, so this is the cluster one. So cluster one called corresponding to class one. Cluster two correspond to class two, etc. and so forth. Once the label is associated, then you can further go for a supervised learning. So that's the kind of approach we can use. And there is another category of learning like we generally utilize. So agent-based learning. So that means so the decision is not a single stage, but rather than like okay, so the decision will be made based on the sequence of operations, this sequence of observation. In such cases, so generally we go for reinforcement learning. So mainly like for gaming kind of approaches. So where like okay, I cannot decide the decision or like it's a winner or loser in the first stage of movement. So we need to observe sequence of moves to decide whether the game currently we are playing is eventually will result in a win or loss. So that is the in such kind of scenario we generally go for reinforcement learning. So these are like okay. So in other words, in machine learning, any kind of learning algorithms you try to see like okay, so that can be broadly classified into one of these three categories. Either it can be a supervised learning based, so or unsupervised learning based, or reinforcement learning based algorithm. Okay. So having said all these things, so what is the main limitation? Like okay, so what exactly like the main challenges or the bottleneck in conventional machine learning? So I think probably in the last 3 days you listen to like multiple lectures, right? So in this 3 days, what you found like is the most challenging task in machine learning? Machine learning has got different stages, right? Like you need to collect the data, you need to pre-process the data, and then you need to label them, and then you need to select the appropriate machine learning algorithm. Then you need to find that is called like so we call it as a modeling. And then like you need to identify like a suitable hyperparameter, like so that is a optimizers actually. Like so what kind of learning algorithm I need to use, what kind of learning rate I need to use, those kind of like so hyperparameters you need to decide. So that is the mainly for the optimization part. And then like okay, you need to train and try to see like okay whether model is converging or not. And then based on that, you try to evaluate the model. Once the model evaluation is satisfactory, then we generally go for deployment. In all these stages, so which stage is more challenging, or like okay, so which stage you feel like okay, so which is more cumbersome or a bottleneck in the machine learning? Hmm? Any answer? Like, okay. So basically, like there could be like okay, so each and every stage is most challenging. But however, in conventional machine learning, so the in any machine learning algorithm, your performance of machine learning algorithm depends on three primary factors. Okay, one is what kind of data you are going to collect. Like okay, so how you are going to collect the data. Okay, and how accurately you annotate the data. If I'm talking about the supervised learning, once data is collected, then you need to go for like say extracting the features, because in reality we hardly train the machine learning algorithms with the raw data. So basically you need to find out a suitable features, okay, so a characteristic attributes which can like okay, so discriminate one pattern from the another pattern, one class of pattern from the another class of pattern. Okay. So then we extract the features, then you select the model. Like okay, so for model selection, like okay, so now with advancement in the computation technology, with all the software packages available, so trying out multiple algorithms is not very difficult. So earlier, like okay, so it is required to code each and every classifier. Now it is not required. That's not the case now. Okay. So you have like the multiple packages available, like the multiple classifiers are available. You can just collect the data, extract the feature, and then train multiple classifiers and try to see which classifier is performing better on this particular data. Okay. So, but feature extraction is one major bottleneck, like in conventional machine learning techniques, which requires lot of domain expertise, because you cannot, given a data, only domain expert can decide what is the appropriate feature, what kind of features I need to look. Whether I need to, like, okay, if I'm talking about the images, so whether like, okay, so if it is a signal, two-dimensional signal or one-dimensional signal, whether I need to extract the features in the time domain or a frequency domain. If it is in a frequency domain, what frequencies are more prominent? What kind of frequencies I need to extract? Okay. So those kind of domain expertise is required. For example, even if it is go for a medical images, right? So the lot of domain expertise is required to see, like, so what kind of information I need to extract from the image. That requires lot of domain expertise. And then how many features one need to extract. So whether I need to extract, like, okay, so infinitely many number of features, or like, okay, I can extract only one feature. So how do you decide that? How many features you need to extract? So that is another second question that needs to be answered. And what kind of features? Like, okay, if somebody, like, okay, so if you have a feature extraction or feature transformation methods available, then you need to decide what kind of features I need to keep. So whether I need to keep all extracted features, or whether, like, okay, so whether all of them are, like, okay, so really useful to do the classification, or like, okay, so only some are, like, okay, so contributing for the accuracy of the classification, etc. And then one need to address the computation complexity. If you try to go for extracting features, so your computation is like, okay, so you're spending too much of time in extracting the features. That is computationally intensive. And not only that, so it also adds the burden on the memory, because more the number of features, more number of attributes extract, so more, like, okay, more memory is required, and your learning algorithm and classification, like the prediction, become slower. So these are all the problems, like, so that need to be addressed. So in fact, so these major challenges led to, like, the advancement of the new journey in the machine learning called deep learning. So in other words, so deep learning is not something new. So deep learning is still a machine learning technique, but it tries to address a specific case of problem. Like, okay, so the problem associated with feature extraction. Okay. So there are a whole lot of challenges involved in extracting the suitable features for a given problem domain. So deep learning tries to address that particular problem. And we'll see, like, okay, so what exactly, like, okay, so how the deep learning will try to address this problem in the subsequent slides, right? So if I, in a single slide, if I try to put, like, okay, in a picture, really, like, what is the difference between the conventional machine learning technique and the deep learning technique? So in conventional machine learning technique, so okay. In conventional machine learning technique, so you have a data. So human has to, like, okay, so some domain expertise. Okay, so he is the person, like, okay, so he is responsible for deciding what kind of feature, like, we need to address. So whatever the questions we raised in the previous slide, right? So this domain expert of the person, like, okay, so he is responsible to address all these questions. Like, okay, you need to decide based on the experience what kind of features I need to extract, how many features I need to extract. Okay, so if I have extracted, like, okay, too many features, whether I need to keep all the features, or, like, okay, if I want to reduce the number of features, what kind of features I need to keep, and what kind of features I can throw out, etc. and so forth. So how do I tackle the computation complexity? All these aspects he has to, like, so this person has to address. In fact, this feature extraction technique, whatever we are trying to talk here, right? So generally we call this as a handcrafted features. Handcrafted feature means, so for a particular problem, for a particular kind of data, so we try to find out handcrafted features, okay, based on so certain categories, like, so the domain expertise, like, so based on the need, based on the memory requirement, etc. and so forth. The person who is responsible for extracting the feature, you will decide. Once the data is given, features are extracted, generally we go for, like, okay, so classification. Here, your classification model could be anything. You can go for, like, okay, so KNN, nearest neighborhood classifier, or, like, so the random forest, decision trees, or even SVM, neural network, whatever you learned in the yesterday, right? So any kind of classifier, you have a choice to select any classifier of your choice depending on the data and depending on what type of data and what kind of features you extracted. Then you train it, and once we train the classifier, we get a model, and that model will be utilized to do the classification in the real time. Clear? So in other words, these are the stages involved in your conventional machine learning. Here, the major bottleneck is this actually. We want to address. Okay. So we want to try to eliminate. Like so, this is the major bottleneck. So whereas in case of deep learning, what we are trying to do is, so we have a data, input data, still data is required. So instead of like okay, so having a person, like okay, so the human or a person who is responsible for extracting the unconnected features, right? So we try to have a model where we try to combine a feature extraction and classification together. Okay? So we try to put both feature extraction and classification into one single framework. So that framework is called deep learning framework. So now in deep learning, all you need to worry about is collecting only the data. You need not worry about what kind of features you need to extract, how many features you need to extract. You need not to worry. You can just collect the data, define a deep learning framework, okay, so that will learn the feature, and based on the learned feature, we will try to do the classification, and then you can utilize that model for doing your task of prediction. Clear? So in fact, this is the major difference. So in other words, it exactly looks similar, right? That's the reason like so deep learning is a part of machine learning. It's not like it's a different technology altogether. It's a subpart of machine learning. Only thing is like because the deep learning tries to address the problem of a manual or the uncrafted feature extraction technique by doing the feature learning and doing the class. See here, if you can closely observe, there is one more interesting problem like so the deep learning is trying to address. Okay, so here like okay, so there is like okay, so this is the data, input data, right? So the input data is this, and your classifier is sitting somewhere here, and this classification algorithm doesn't know anything about the data. Okay? So the classification algorithm or classification model relies purely on the features extracted by this person. Like okay, so the person like okay, so is responsible for extracting the features. In other words, there is a significant gap between the input data and the learning algorithm. Like okay, so there is a gap. Like okay, so there is a the person who is responsible for extracting the features, right? He doesn't know how the classifier works. There is one level of gap here. Okay, and so the classification algorithm doesn't know what exactly the data is, because like so it works only on the features, right? So there is a gap actually. So that's the reason. So the conventional machine learning is also called like okay, it's a shallow learning process. We are not getting into the deep insight into like okay, so what is the data, what like so what is actually required by the classification, whether I am extracting the same kind of features or not. Whereas in case of a deep learning, what it is trying to do, like so I have a classifier here. This is the classifier, and let us say like this is the feature extractor. Now feature extractor is extracting only those features which are more appropriate for the classification to perform the classification task appropriately, and classifier is seeking to extract like okay, so the appropriate feature for the classification task. There is a synergy between these two. Okay, so that's the reason like okay, so there is a deeper insight like okay, so that is the deep learning model gets into a deep insight into the data to extract or seek for its features which are very, very appropriate for the classifier, and this feature extraction extracts the feature which are suitable for the classification. Hence, these kind of algorithms are called deep algorithms. Okay, deep learning algorithms. So there is a misconception like okay, so if you are like okay, so yesterday you might have learned to the neural networks, right? So general misconception is so a shallow network is like okay, a neural network with one or two hidden layers is a shallow network or a shallow learning algorithm, and any network which is having more number of hidden layers is considered as a deep architecture. See, that's true, like okay, true to some extent, but deep learning is not only like okay, so stacking too many number of hidden layers. So too many number of hidden layer stacking is required to learn the get the deeper insight of the data. But deep learning main objective is to overcome the problem of handcrafted feature extraction. By doing what? So getting into the deeper insight into data, feature extraction, and classification. All these works in highly tandem and highly synergistic manner, so that like okay, so overall system works in efficient and effective manner. Clear? Now the question is like okay, so in that if that is the case, so now like okay, so what is the conclusion we are trying to derive? So in case of machine learning, somebody has to sit and decide what kind of features I need to extract to do the classification. So whereas in case of deep learning, you need not worry about the feature extraction. You just get the data, and your deep learning framework will try to take care of rest of the things. Then the question is, can I always go for a deep learning? Is machine learning or conventional machine learning algorithms are obsolete? That is the question that needs to be answered, right? Okay, so that we will try to see like okay, so whether like okay, so whether it is really required, or like okay, so when to go for a conventional classical machine learning algorithms and when to go for deep learning algorithm, we will try to answer like in the subsequent slide. Okay. Any questions? Any questions? So if no questions,
no, sir.
So yeah, we'll just move to the next slide. So this is what like okay, the machine learning and deep learning. So if you try to put it into the machine learning in practice, like okay, so we have so we have two parts, right? One is describing your data with a feature a computer can understand. So why generally we go for feature extraction means like okay, because your computers cannot understand the raw data. So for example, if I give an image, computer cannot understand the image. You need to extract the features from that image, right? So because for your if I give an image or video, so it's nothing but a pixel. It's nothing but a matrix. So computer can see only those numbers. It cannot derive any significant information from that. If at all you want to convey some information, then you need to extract those certain features from that images or the video. So similarly, even for the text or non-image data, also same thing. So typically, your computer cannot understand like okay, so what the data is. Like it's all about the numbers, right? So you need to decide like okay, so what exactly that number means by doing certain kind of describing the data in terms of its characteristic attributes. That we generally call it as a feature. So this kind of like okay, so this requires that this I think already we explained, right? So it requires a domain specific expertise, and it requires a lot of experience. It's not the PhD, like okay, so it requires a lot of experience. That's what I'm trying to convey here. So once we have that feature extraction technique, and this is the learning algorithm. In other words, even if you look into the conventional machine learning, most of your effort, that is 90% of your effort, is revolving around extracting or deciding like so what is the appropriate feature. Okay, so maybe like okay, so 10 or 15% of the effort only will be focusing on the actual machine learning problem, like so the learning algorithm and like so tweaking the parameters. See, whenever like okay, in conventional machine learning, if your results are like okay, so not meeting your desired expectations, the first thing you need to see is like okay, so whether try to analyze the features, like whether your features is good, whether they are linearly separable or like if they are separable, like if your features are free from correlation, etc. and so forth. Those kind of analysis you need to do. So that analysis requires most of your effort, and only like okay, so you are tweaking the hyperparameters or like okay, learning rate, it requires much smaller effort compared to your tweaking the feature extraction technique. So that's how like okay, so the most of your effort will be focused in conventional machine learning. Okay. So with this as a backdrop, like okay, so let me just get into like whatever the topic we discussed yesterday. So because this is required for some of our discussion today. So I think yesterday you discussed about the neural network, right? A conventional or a shallow neural network. So in that, like okay, you also understood about like okay, so there is something called input layers and something called output layers. Input layers are responsible for collecting the inputs, and output layers are responsible for getting the output. Okay, so that means like okay, so these two layers are like exposed to the external world. That's why they are called input layers and output layers. So this is where you can give the input, and this is where you can collect the output. So similarly, even in the human brain, right, we have a 5 sensory organs. These 5 sensory organs are nothing but an input layer. So from those sensory organs, we brain try to get the input from the input of the external world, and brain try to perform certain operation, and the same thing, like so whatever the processing done, so that will be given as action in terms of through the output nodes. So this is where you can collect the output of the network. So there are certain layers, certain neurons, which are hidden from both input and output layer. So they are not directly accessible from the external world. That's why they are called hidden, right? So now let us try to. I think you already discussed. Let me ask a few questions here. Can I think of a network? Okay, so a neural network hidden layers. Can I think of a neural network with without any hidden layer? All of you are able to get my question, right? My question is, so yesterday you discussed about the neural network. So there is like the input layer, output layer, and some hidden layer. So the question is, can we think of a network without any hidden layer? I think Vijayendra and Bhavani, many people are telling it is no. Why do you think it is no? Why I need to understand it? Typically, like, okay, let me try to. Basically, like, okay, you just collect the input layer. The input neuron doesn't perform any operation, right? Just it will collect the input from the external source, and it will pass on to the next subsequent layer. And typically, so assume that, like, okay, so this is your network. So I have two input neurons, and this is my output neuron. Okay. So I can still connect this, right? So this is my input 1, I1. This is input 2, I2. So here what I am trying to do, so there is a weight here, right? W1, W2, let us say. So here, if this is my output neuron, so what I am trying to do here, W1 into I1, or else summation of I into W. Okay. So then if there is any bias, I will try to add the bias, and then we apply some squashing function, right? Yes. So I think yesterday you learned about multiple squashing function, like, okay, so sigmoid, like, okay, so ReLU, etc. So any of those squashing function I will try to apply, and based on that, like, we will get some output. That means theoretically it is possible to have a network without any hidden layers. That means you can still consider a neural network without any hidden layers. That is possible. But the question is, what kind of problems you are going to solve with this kind of network? A network without having any hidden layers. Can anyone tell me, like, so now, now do you agree, like, okay, so now you can always think of a network without any hidden layers? Yes, right. So that means theoretically it is possible to have these kind of networks, a network without having any hidden layer. That's possible. Now the question is, so what kind of problems I can solve? Like, okay, so am I able to solve any problem with this kind of network? Yes, you can still do the classification problem with this kind of network, provided your data is a linear mapping. Like, so it's a linear. Like, if you assume that, okay, you extracted very good features which are linearly separable. Okay, and you can still do that kind of classification problem with this kind of network without any hidden layer, because I don't want to introduce any non-linearity. Okay, my problem, like, so turns out to be a linear mapping problem. So if that problem is a linear mapping problem, I can consider solving those kind of problems with the help of this network, a network without having any hidden layers. Clear? Yes. Okay, let me ask another question. If that is the case, okay, so that means, like, okay, so if you can think of a network without any hidden layers, so then what should be the maximum number of hidden layers? So I should have it in my system to do the classification task. Can I have like, okay, so 1 layer, 2 layer, 3 layer, etc. How many layers I should have? Like? Getting my question? Okay. So somebody is telling like, okay, so 1 layer is good enough to approximate any function. Okay, fine. So that means like, okay, so somebody said like, okay, so one is good enough, and somebody is telling like, okay, so no fixed, you can have any number of hidden layers. So both are true. Like, okay, so theoretically, you can have any number of hidden layers, right? So you can have 0 layers, and you can have any number of hidden layers. Like, okay, you can keep on stacking it. So there is absolutely no limitation. So provide like theoretically there is no limitation. Like, okay, you can have any number of hidden layers. But of course, the computationally it will be like, okay, so there is a limitation. If you have more number of hidden layers, it will have like, okay, so a lot of computational implications on that. Now the question is like, okay, so we decided about like, okay, so one more question. So it is easy to decide the number of neurons in the input layer and the number of neurons in the output layer. True. So usually like, okay, the number of neurons in the input layer is decided based on the number of inputs or the number of features you have extracted, and the number of neurons in the output layer is decided based on the number of classes on which you are working. Now, how do you decide the number of neurons in the hidden layer? There are two aspects, right? One is having the number of hidden layers, and within that each hidden layer, how many hidden neurons they should have. In fact, these are the kind of questions that need to be answered, like, okay, so while deciding the architecture. Like, okay, so these are the problems related to the modeling. Okay, so typically, like, okay, so once you extracted the features, you need to decide, like, okay, so whether I need to have one hidden layer, two hidden layers, so 3 hidden layers to solve my problem. So if I decided to have like, okay, one hidden layer, how many hidden neurons should be there in one first layer? How many hidden neurons should be there in the second layer, etc. and so forth. Okay. So, we will try to see like, okay, the next few slides. So, so what kind of how we can easily build a shallow network, etc. and so forth. Clear? So with this discussion, like, okay, so let me continue, and then like, okay, so we will revisit this in a while. Okay. So now, like, okay, again with that, generally any network, any neural network with one hidden layer, right? So one or like, okay, so at most 2 hidden layers. So such kind of networks we generally call it as a shallow network. A network with only one hidden layer or at most 2 hidden layers. So still we call such kind of networks as a shallow network. Any network having more than 2 or more than 3 hidden layers, right? So such kind of networks we generally classify it as a deeper architecture. Clear? So again, like, so this is the repetition. So about like, so the conventional machine learning and deep learning. In the deep learning, we try to eliminate this stage by moving feature extraction and the prediction into a single framework called deep prediction model or deep prediction or deep learning framework. Okay. Now let us see like, okay, so whether like, okay, so a conventional machine learning, when to use the conventional machine learning and when to go for deep learning kind of aspects. If you look into this graph, okay, so the x-axis of the graph is the size of data. That means how much of data, how many data points you have considered, and y-axis corresponds to the performance. You can clearly see here when the number of data points, okay, the number of data elements is smaller. That means if you are having less number of samples to train your network. Okay. So in such scenario, so your traditional machine learning outperforms deep learning algorithms, and deep learning algorithms outperforms the traditional machine learning only when like a sufficient amount of data is available. That means, so if you are working with a problem, okay, so where data is a scarcity, so that means you are having very limited data set, so or the limited scope to collect the data set. In such scenario, it is advisable for you to go with a conventional machine learning Because why, like, okay, so probably, like, okay, if you can have a closer look to see, like, okay, so why machine learning outperform deep learning in this area. This is because the number of data samples what you have extracted is less. So with that lesser data, deep learning is not able to learn or make, like, okay, any transformation, like, okay, so any appropriate model, a suitable model. But whereas here in the case of conventional machine learning, there is a domain expert, right? So who is responsible for extracting the feature? Okay, he has decided, like, okay, so what is the appropriate feature? Because of that knowledge, so your conventional machine learning outperforms here. Whereas in case, like, okay, so the number of data points, like, okay, if you try to keep on providing additional data, so then, like, okay, so your deep learning algorithm start picking up the learning capability. Like, okay, so it will try to learn more insight into the data and its performance increases. Whereas your conventional machine learning algorithm performance is almost saturating. Why? Because so having any additional data without, like, okay, so tweaking your feature extraction technique, right? It doesn't perform. Like, it doesn't significantly improve the performance. Clear? So that is the main difference. Like, okay, so in other words, so I raised one point, right? So when to go for a conventional machine learning? Like, okay, so conventional machine learning is not obsolete. Like, it's going to be available for some more time. Okay. The thing is, when data collection and data availability is a scarcity, like, so you are not able to collect a sufficient amount of data or sufficient amount of ground truth data, so still it is advisable to go for a conventional machine learning. So that, like, you can utilize the domain expertise to improve the performance. Whereas, like, okay, so if you are working on a problem where data collection is not a scarcity, you can get enormous amount of data. So then obviously, like, why not? You go for a deep learning, like, so on a deep learning framework on huge amount of data set performs much better than a conventional machine learning. This graph gives, like, okay, so a clear indication that when to go for conventional machine learning and when to go for a deep learning method. Clear? Okay, so I think I'll just talk about the supervised learning, like, okay, so how that supervised learning algorithm works. So typically, like, okay, so let us say, like, I have an image. So this is the image, and this image I need to classify into one of the two classes actually, whether that image is a indoor image or outdoor image. Okay, yes or no, or, like, so whether the question being asked is whether it's outdoor image or not. Okay, so it's a binary class problem. So answer could be yes or no. So in case of a conventional machine learning, what we try to do, so given an image, you need to decide what kind of features I need to extract to classify the image as an indoor image or outdoor image. So typically, so you may go for, like, okay, so typically in case of indoor image, you may get a lot of proper edges which are, like, okay, so in a regular shape, like, okay, so you will get a lot of linear edge structure. So if that is the availability, then I will decide based on, like, those edge patterns and the edge maps. I will decide, okay, so this image is a indoor image. If it is an outdoor image, so then, like, okay, still we may get a lot of edges, but the edges may not be in the regular pattern. Okay, so there could be a lot of irregular shaped edges. That is the kind of features I need to extract, and I will extract those features and give it to the classifier to classify. So whether the image is a indoor image or not. So first, what we try to do, we go for extracting the handcrafted features. What are these handcrafted features? It could be your edges, it could be corners, it could be landmark points, etc. and so forth. Okay, depending on the problem and depending on the sophistication required, like, you can extract what kind of features are important. So now, why I'm trying to stress upon here is, like, okay, so in order to see, like, okay, so whether it's a outdoor image or indoor image, you should have some insight, like, okay, so when to call, like, okay, so some image is indoor image. What are the kind of patterns observed in the indoor images? What are the kind of patterns observed in the outdoor images, etc. and so forth? So you try to utilize that domain expertise or the knowledge to decide, oh, whether I need to go for extracting the edges. Okay, so corner points are suitable here, and distribution of those corner points are also I will try to study. So these are the kind of points, features I will try to study, and based on that we will try to extract those features. And once those features are extracted, then generally we go for a trainable classifier. Here, So you can use any of the any classifier, like so it could be SVN, random forest. There are a whole lot of classifiers, right? So you can use any classifier to do train the features, extracted features, to see like okay, so into one of the two classes, to classify the image into one of these two classes. So this is how it works. So as already discussed, right? It's very tedious and costly. So deciding on like so what features and developing each feature extraction technique. Okay, it's a very cumbersome time consuming process. And one more major limitation is the kind of features whatever you extracted for this problem. Okay, to give an image, so to classify this image as an indoor image and outdoor image. So may work only for this the features whatever you extracted for this problem works only very well for this problem. Like okay, so if you use the same feature extraction technique for the other problem, like for example like the OCR kind of problem, it may not work appropriately. So the handcrafted features are usually highly dependent on the application. So whatever the feature you extracted is very specific to a given application type or a problem specific, and which may not work reliably well for the other problems. Depending on problem, depending on the data set, every time you need to decide a new feature extraction technique. So that becomes very time consuming, and it's a bottleneck process. Every time I give a new problem, I get into a new problem, you try to reinvent everything. Like you try to reinvent from the beginning, restart from the beginning. So collect the data, decide what kind of features I need to extract. So if the feature extraction algorithms are not available, you try to implement them, extract the features, and try to decide the classifier. If the classifier is not performing well, even upon fine-tuning all the parameters, go back and reinvestigating on the features, extract additional features. Then you will end up with like okay, so too many features. Then memory is becoming like okay, so it is taking too much of memory. Then you need to decide like okay, so now like with the number of features are more, I need to decide like okay, so I need to remove some of the features. Then you need to go for dimensional reduction, like to decide what features I need to keep and what features I can discard. So then you get into a vicious cycle. Okay. So for every problem, you get into this kind of vicious cycle. That becomes a bottleneck in conventional machine learning. Okay. So whereas like okay, in the deep learning, what we try to do like okay, so given an image, so same problem, right? So I have an image, so I need to classify this image into a indoor image or an outdoor image. How this we'll try to do? So from a given image, so we will see like okay in the little while like okay, so how these low level features, mid level features are extracted. So from the pixel level, we try to extract some low level features, okay, and then so in terms of like okay, so edges, corners, etc. and so forth. From these features, we try to extract like so some additional features from the feature maps, okay? And then so the next higher level features. So these are the like okay, so we try to extract different categories of the different pyramids, different level of features, okay? And then we give it to the trainable classifier. So your trainable classifier could be any of those classifiers, right? Like it could be neural network, or it could be SVM, or etc. Whatever the classifier, and then that will do the classification. That means so we are having two parts here. So this is where I am trying to extract all possible features. So starting from low level features to mid level to high level, etc. and so forth. Once I have extracted the features, okay, so we try to utilize all possible features and then give it to the trainable classifier and then do the classification. Clear? So basically in deep learning, what we are trying to do, I am trying to extract all possible features. Okay, and this extracted all possible features will be given to the trainable classifier to do classification. Okay. Any questions?
Sir.
Yes.
Sir.
Yes, madam.
Some queries are there. Shall I ask now itself, sir, from the participant?
Yes.
Okay. So from Ashwini N, she is asking, sir, can we know what features deep learning is extracting?
The answer is yes. Okay, so there are like beta map visualization, class activation map visualization. So that means whenever we try to do the convolution neural network, you can clearly see like okay, so what kind of features each layer is trying to learn. Probably like okay, so we'll try to see like in the subsequent slide. I will explain that. So the answer is yes. Like, okay, so you clearly see, like, so what kind of image portion it is trying to learn or focus to do the classification task.
Okay. So another question from Hari Krishna Naik. So what are the advantages of having more number of hidden layers?
Okay. So basically, in deep learning, like, okay, I don't want to extract handcrafted features, right? So the more number of hidden layers is basically what we are trying to, like, what is the functionality of hidden layer? Like, let me ask back the question. What is the what kind of activity or the function? What is the functionality of hidden layer? Basically, whenever I introduce a hidden layer, there are certain hidden neurons, right? So what these hidden neurons are trying to do, like, so it tries to collect all the inputs, perform the linear transformation of these inputs, and then upon performing the linear operation on the inputs, okay, it tries to place some activation maps. So trying to bring some kind of non-linearity. That means it will try to transform your data, like, okay, so whatever the feature map into, like, okay, so refined feature map, so that it can be classified appropriately in the subsequent layer. So having more number of hidden layers, it will try to refine your data into subsequent levels. Like, okay, so trying to get, like, okay, so more degree of refinement. It will try to transform your data into raw data into a data suitable for, like, okay, so subsequent classification. So if I ask, like, okay, so in the having more number of hidden, like, assume that, like, okay, so now this is one hidden layer. So this will be done by, like, okay, so this low level features, right? So the first hidden layer, which will try to take the raw data and try to apply some kind of operation. So then it will try to extract first level of features. So generally, like, so since it is working on the pixel level, we call it as a low level feature extraction technique. Now, these low level features, whatever we extracted here in the first hidden layer, this will be the input to the next hidden layer here. Now, what I am trying to do, I am not working on the raw data now, rather than, like, I am working on the low level features extracted here. This serves as the input to this layer, and whatever the operation I am trying to perform now, like, so I am trying to refine it further. Refine further for what? So to attain my final goal of classification. So here, so next further level of operation, like, refinement will happen. So that's the reason I try to extract. So next level of features, mid-level features. Okay. So then, so for the next hidden layer, this mid-level features are served as the input features, input for this layer, and this will try to further refine it. So that way, so your data will get refined and refined further at each and every hidden layer. Okay. So each and every convolution layer, like, if I'm talking about the convolution layer, like, so it will try to create a feature pyramid. So basically, like, okay, so I start with low level features. So with I get a low level feature map. So then, so next level of higher level, mid level feature, etc. So basically, we are trying to construct a feature pyramid. So it will try to refine and try to accumulate all this information to do the classification in a much efficient and effective manner. So that's the main crux of, like, so why deep learning is always have, like, okay, so more number of hidden layers is mainly because of this aspect. I am trying to refine the data further and further so that, like, okay, so my classification becomes more effective at the later stage. Yes. Hello.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, one more query from Dr. S. Padma. So what about the number of hidden neurons?
Pardon me, what is the question?
What about the number of hidden neurons?
Okay. So typically, like, okay, so theoretically, there is no limit actually. Like, okay, so you can have any number of neurons. Theoretically, like, okay, so there is no limitation on the number of neurons in the hidden layer. But however, like, okay, so in most of the shallow networks, right, we try to put, like, with a certain restriction based on the input as a function of input and output layer. Okay. So typically, like, okay, so twice the number of two times of input divided by the number of neurons in the output will be the maximum number of neurons we will try to keep it. But theoretically, there is no restriction on the number of neurons you can have it in the hidden layer. Each hidden layer.
Okay. Sir, one more query from Vaishnavi. What's the difference between feature extraction and keyword extraction?
So basically, why we are trying to extract the keywords. The feature means like, okay, so basically you are having a text. I don't want to like, okay, so text is a very raw form. I don't want to like, so there are some stop words which doesn't convey any significant information about that particular text. I need to extract certain keywords from that text or the sentence to decide so what the particular text matter is conveying. In other words, so if I'm working on a text data, keyword is a feature actually. What like so you consider features like so I am talking feature as a more generic term. Okay, so depending on the problem, like if you are working with images or videos, so you will have like a lot of generic features like or domain specific features like shape, color, texture, etc. and so forth. So similarly, if somebody is working with the textual data, right? So keyword and like okay, so their frequency, word frequency, etc. and so forth. Those will also serve as a feature value.
Okay. So one more query from Pooja H. Sir, you told that the images will be directly fed to the model without any feature extraction. What if there is a noise in the data? Will the model handle such input by itself?
It is expected to handle it. Like okay, if your data is constantly having that noise, right? So your model will try to handle that. Like, so whatever the deep learning model, right? So it will try to handle it. So probably like okay, in the next part of my presentation, I talked about autoencoders, right? I will show you like how these autoencoders can be used to even extend your problems, like okay, so to correct the deep learning or like so denoising, etc. and so forth. That means even the deep learning can be trained to learn about the noise itself, so that I can apply the reverse process to remove the noise. So that probably we'll see like the subsequent slides.
So one more query, sir. How machine learning will remain relevant?
So machine learning, like okay, so bear in mind, like okay, so deep learning is not a new technology. Like it's still a support of machine learning. So whereas like okay, so the machine learning, if your data is very limited, so the number of data points is data samples are limited. So still you don't have any other choice. You need to still go for a conventional machine learning because you need to utilize a lot of domain expertise. Okay, so that is the one part. And the second part is, if you look into this overall architecture, right? So here, so my main problem is not with the trainable classifier. I am okay with the classifier, but only thing is I don't want to extract the feature. So deep learning, we are trying to extract the features, and once we have the extracted features, you can still utilize your conventional machine learning. So conventional machine learning to do the classification task. So sorry for that. So as I said, right, if you look into the performance graph, so if your data is, you go for your conventional classification technique, conventional machine learning. So if you have more amount of data, very high price, whether you can go for traditional machine learning or deep learning with the traditional.
Sir, one more, they're worried about, should we stop working in machine learning for PG or PhD?
No, whether you are working on deep learning or not, so still you are working on the machine learning only. Like, okay, even if you are working on applying deep learning, you are still working on machine learning.
Okay. So one more query from the participant. Sir, which model is more suitable to process video input?
Which model
is more suitable to process video input?
So what you want to like? What is the end objective? Because in video there are a lot of operations, right? Like okay, you can detect the objects, you can detect the event, etc. and so forth. What kind of things you need to do? Like whether you need to do the segmentation, whether you need to do the classification, whether you want to do the action recognition. So depending on that, we need to decide like so what model is appropriate. But however, like in the last part of my presentation, I was shown I captured one specific case for object detection using various standard.
Sir, shall I take another question?
Yes, madam.
Yeah, okay. Sir, extracting relevant features from the data and a certain model giving better performance be considered as contribution to research?
Can you repeat the question?
Extracting the relevant features from the data and a certain model giving better performance can be considered as contribution to research?
So, if I understand the question, so basically your contribution is extracting a relevant feature for a given problem, but however you are keeping the model constant, right? Is that the case, or?
Hello?
Hello. So, I'm just. So basically, like, okay, so your contribution can always based on, like, okay, so in terms of feature extraction techniques, like, okay, so you found, like, okay, so none of the existing feature extraction techniques are more appropriate, or you try to combine your features, like, with multiple features in a very, very interesting and innovative way to tweak the performance. So that is the contribution. And again, like, okay, so having a, like, okay, so open setup, like, okay, so having a innovative setup combining all these features, extracting the relevant features, and then having, like, okay, so very appropriate classifier, that is also a contribution. Both way you can consider it.
Okay. Sir, one more query from the participant. What are the techniques comes under feature extraction as well as keyword extraction?
Could you please repeat?
What are the techniques comes under feature extraction as well as keyword extraction?
No, as I said, like, okay, so the keyword extraction and feature extraction, I'm just talking about in the most generic term. So even like, okay, your keyword extraction, right? That will also try to see, like, okay, so what kind of if somebody is working on a text domain, so the appropriate feature extraction technique will be used to find out what is the appropriate keyword. Okay, so generally feature extraction is more generic term. Like, okay, I'm trying to talk which is suitable for both time series data, temporal data, image data, and as well as the text data. So the keyword extraction technique, whatever you used, so that is a feature extraction for a text data, which may not be suitable for the image data. So depending on your application, you need to decide, like, so what is the appropriate feature extraction technique. Feature extraction technique is more generic word. So keyword extraction, if you are working on a text data, like, okay, so keywords extractor itself serves as a feature extraction.
Okay, so remaining questions will be taken at the end of this session.
Okay, sure.
So that we will complete this session.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so now the question is, like, okay, so the next question we will try to answer. So why deep learning actually? Like, okay, so I think in the beginning I asked one question, like, okay, so how many hidden layers, right? So somebody said, like, okay, so only one hidden layer is good enough to approximate any function. If that is the case, why we are supposed to go for a deep network, deep architecture? Why not for a shallow architecture? Okay, let us look into it. So there is some experiment conducted by Tede and Frank group. Okay, so they studied, like, okay, so whether the deeper architecture is better or fatter architectures are better. what they did, they want to keep the 2K, the 2000 number of hidden neurons. These 2000 neurons are spread across like okay, only one hidden layer. That means so one hidden layer with the 2000 neurons. Okay. If that is the case, the word error rate, like okay, so they were applying for the text classification, the word recognition, like okay, so the word rate was like okay, about 24.2%. Okay. So they wanted to apply for the conversational speech recognition. So in that one, how accurately like okay, the classifier is able to recognize the word. Okay. So similarly, like okay, so they kept the number of neurons as 2000 only, but these 2000 neurons are spread across multiple layers, different layers. So same 2000 neurons spread across 2 layers. So they got this is the word error rate, and as the number of layers increases, right? Number of hidden layers increases. They found like okay, so the word error rate is consistently reducing. Okay, this is one experiment. Okay, you'll see like okay, but coming back to this discussion, right? Like okay, so the number of hidden layers. You take any problem, any classification problem. Okay, so any classification problem can be solved with the help of a neural network with only one hidden layer. Okay, so that's a very interesting theorem called universality theorem. I'm not getting into the proof of the theorem. A very simple theorem. You can easily found in the network proof of this network. What it says is, so any class, you take any classification problem. Okay, so where Rn is the input space. That means you extracted n number of features, and you need to map it into n number of classes. Okay, so this is the number of classes. Any classification problem, you need to learn about this function f. Okay. So any classification problem or any function that can be approximated with at most one hidden layer, provided we should have flexibility to add as many neurons as possible. That means I'm having only one hidden layer, but the number of neurons in the hidden layer can be added as much as possible. If that is the that flexibility is given, so then you can approximate any function f to meet this task. Okay. So that's what the universality theorem says actually. Okay. So such kind of networks generally we call it as a fat network. Why it is a fat network means, so because in order to approximate this function f, right, I am trying to add as many number of neurons as possible. The moment I add like more and more number of neurons, this layer, hidden layer becomes fatter and fatter. Okay. So this is not a deep network, it's a shallow fat network. Okay, whereas deep network means like okay, you will have like okay, so more number of hidden layers here. So such kind of networks are called deep network. Clear? If that is the case, the question that needs to be answered is, why deep network? Why not fat network? Very interesting question, right? So if it mathematically it is proven that any network, any function f can be realized with only one hidden layer with this kind of fat network, why people are still like okay, going for a deeper network? We try to see like okay, so why deeper network works much better than the fat network. Okay, this is a shallow fat network, and this is how the deep network looks like. Okay. The number of parameters will be same. So even like in the previous case, right, I said the number of parameters are same, right? The number of input output neurons are like exactly same. So which one to select? So this is again the same experiment. Okay, so I put it into by the same author. Okay, so this is the same 2000 neurons. They spread across 7 hidden layers. This is what the error rate. Okay, here the number of layers is kept fixed. Here the number of layers, like number of neurons are kept constant, 2000 neurons, but they are spread across 7 layers. Here in this case, the number of layers is kept as constant. They are trying to keep only one network, one hidden layer. In the first instance, they studied like with 3000 odd hidden neurons. So this is the word error rate. Okay. So even after adding 16,000 hidden neurons, still they get like, okay, so the very significant reduction in the word error rate. That means in order to get like, okay, so much better accuracy. Okay, so still like, okay, so we need to add too many number of hidden neurons. Okay, so this clearly shows like, okay, so unfortunately there is no mathematical proof like, okay, so why deeper network are performing better compared to like fatter network, but there are experimental studies to show like, so this is one experimental study to show that like, so the deeper architectures are performing much better with less number of parameters compared to a pattern network. Clear? So in fact this gives like, okay, so the very interesting evidence, so which pushes like, okay, so the deep learning much more prominently than a pattern network. Okay. See here like, okay, so even with 16,000 parameters like, so the error rate was not very significant, whereas like, okay, so here this they got very much less word error rate. So why? What is the problem with that kind of shallow network, the fat network is? So typically, if you are having only one hidden layer, right? So what you are trying to do is you are trying to learn too many classification, too many objectives in a single layer. Okay. In order to do that, so you need to have like, okay, more number of data points, more number of parameters, and more data is also required. Okay. So it will try to do the classifier 1, classifier 2, all classifiers. So for example, my objective is given a image, I need to classify whether that image is a boy or girl. Again, like, okay, within that, whether it is a boy with long hair, girl with long hair, or boy with short hair, or girl with short hair. That is the problem actually. It's a 4-class problem. So if you go for a shallow network, right, or a fat network, it will try to learn all 4 classifiers in a single layer, because you don't have any option. You are having only one hidden layer, right? Whereas if you go for a deeper network, what it will try to do, like it will try to make it more modularized. Okay, so first it will try to do the classification either in terms of, it will try to learn whether it is a boy or girl. Okay, or it will try to do like, okay, whether it is a long or short, and then it will try to learn like, okay, so if it is a boy, then it will try to do the classification whether it is a long hair or short hair. If it is a long hair or short hair is first level, if you learn that parameter, then it will try to classify whether it is a boy or girl. That way, so the deeper architectures has the advantage of modularization. Okay. So sharing by the following classes, like it will try to have a more modularized approach. So yes, training such deep network is much easier compared to training the fatter network. That's the main reason why in the literature we found more of deeper architecture than fatter architecture, though there is a theoretical proof telling that, okay, so a pattern architecture can approximate any function on the to the classification task. Yeah. So now each classifier, like, okay, so these classifiers, like, okay, so can be trained by a little data. Like, okay, so now because every time I am trying to modularize it, so it can be trained by so little and little data, like, so in terms of little batches. So this is what this is how it works. So from the input data, the first layer of first hidden layer, right? It tries to extract the most basic features. Okay, so in other words, it is the most basic classifier. It's the most basic classifier. Now this data, whatever the information, the refined features it has extracted in the first layer, right? That will be given as the input of the next layer. So it will try to utilize the first layer output as the input to build the next level of classification, and etc. and so forth. Okay, so that way at each and every layer, like your data get refined, your data will get more and more refined in the subsequent layer, so that your classifier will give much superior result compared to your shallow network. Yes. So now, like, okay, so if I put it in the, like, with all this, if you put it, So we have like input data. So then we have like the feature learning, so or feature extraction or feature learning, so, and then followed by a classification. In other words, so I'm still in the machine learning framework. So only thing is what I'm trying to automate here is like this is the conventional machine learning framework, right? So you have an input space. So we need to find out a transformation function phi to do the classification, to segregate this into this one of the two classes in the feature space. Okay. So this function phi has to be like a transformation function phi has to be manually handcrafted. Okay. Whereas in case of deep learning, so given a data, so we try to have like a more number of hidden layers. Okay. So the first set of hidden layers will try to learn about the features. Okay. Try to learn the features suitable for the classification. Now, once the feature learning is done, so now you have the option like, okay, you can just, you need not use the neural network here. You can take these features and you can give it to the SVM or any other classifier of your choice, or you can use one more fully connected layer to do the classification. Okay. So in other words, it has got two stages, a feature learning stage and a classification stage. The initial set of hidden layers is responsible for learning the features, and the final set of hidden layers are responsible for the classification. Both put together, generally we call it as a deep learning framework. Any questions before we like we get into the one specific kind of deep learning framework to understand how we can implement deep learning for image and video kind of application. So these are like, in the both cases we are using the classifier. Like here, the only thing is like somebody has to handcraft this. So here the feature will be learned, and then finally subsequently like so this both of the cases it will be followed by a classification process to do the classification. Okay. So now this is about the deep learning. Actually, deep learning is of course like so there are two things one need to understand. Like so deep learning is not only like okay, so stacking too many number of hidden layers. Okay, so that's not the only answer to say like so what is deep learning. Deep learning, yes, so we need to have a too many number of hidden layers, but mainly so deep learning try to addresses the main problem of like so the main bottleneck of classical machine learning, which is a feature extraction. Feature extraction is a major bottleneck. That problem will be addressed effectively using the deep learning. How? By stacking too many number of hidden layers. Okay. So with that understanding, let us try to start towards like okay, so building a deep learning for images.